You're listening to American Medicine Today, presented by the Bonati Spine Institute, featuring the internationally acclaimed inventor of the Bonati spine procedures, Alfred Bonati, MD. Once again, here are Dr. Bonati and your host, Kimberly Brumell.
Thank you for joining us on American Medicine Today. I'm Kimberly Brumell, joined by Ethan Euchre.
Always happy to be here.
Jeff Wagstaff.
Thank you for having me.
And world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Alfred Bonati of the Bonati Spine Institute.
Happy to be here.
Nice.
Well, we have an exciting show lined up. We're going to have a story of recovery. We're going to talk about hacking the human mind.
Which looks really cool.
Fatwa, we're going to discuss that. It's a lady that was targeted by ISIS.
This
they
is
wanted
a person
to kill her.
that you need to mention by name.
Yes.
People know Pamela Geller. She's one of the
yes.
most hated people in the world, according
Wow.
to the left. They absolutely
Right.
despise her. People on the right,
That means we love her.
that's why you want her on the show, Doc.
Exactly. And before we get too far out, I wanted to say there's an interesting new style of treatment for elderly patients with dementia, and it's growing across the country. It's called music therapy. And joining us right now is Loe Hornbuckle, who runs several assisted living homes in the Dallas area, which specializes in Alzheimer's and memory care. Thanks for joining us, Joe.
Low.
Yeah, happy to be
Or
on there.
Low.
That's okay. When your name's Loe Hornbuckle, you're used to all sort of different permeations.
By the way, side note, Low, we've all been talking about what an awesome name that
Yes.
is. You sound like an action hero or something. Low Hornbuckle.
Well, I hope to parlay that into a Senate run, so that way I can be a little bit more famous on a national stage.
There you go.
Perfect.
Well, let's get into your topic. Tell us what music therapy is and how you became a believer in its healing abilities.
Yeah, so just to recap, so we actually, in our facilities, we use kind of musical intervention. So we partner with a nonprofit. They have to avoid using the word therapy because there actually is some licensure stuff in our state. There's actually licensed music therapists. But what we focus on is doing personalized music playlists. And the idea is that a couple things. Number one, music is good. We all have seen the effects and the power of music in our own personal lives. You know, you're in a bad mood, a song comes on, you're in a better mood.
Yes.
Going through a breakup, you listen to a certain song, it makes you feel better.
Yes.
Well, personalized music therapy for someone that's going through memory loss in particular is very powerful because if someone is losing their short-term memory and they're sort of going backwards in time with their memory, and they think it's 1965 or 1970, if a song comes on that's familiar to them, then it can create all kinds of emotions and create all kinds of changes and really also cause some physiological changes that really can deal with things like agitation, distress, depression. And so it's a really powerful technique.
Right.
So what our nonprofit that we work with does is they find out, they do a music profile, and they find out what types of music that person enjoyed. Just to hit that perfect note. Because if I play Johnny Cash for somebody that doesn't like Johnny Cash, it's not going to have that same effect as if someone's a big Johnny Cash fan.
Right.
You know,
and so it's a really powerful way to target and kind of deal with some of those emotions.
I was just saying to Ethan, there was the movie The Notebook, and I think there's a scene in there where they use music, and she snaps out of her dementia-esque state and joins, reality, and she recognizes everyone, and how powerful a tool to see that's really working.
And it's not really limited to just it's not just really limited to memory loss. It's actually been really effective too in Parkinson's patients.
Okay.
So obviously Parkinson's traditionally you have a tremor often, where your hands maybe shake a little bit, or you'll have a little bit of a pause in your gait. And so there's actually been video shot of a gentleman with Parkinson's walking regularly with his regular gait being a little bit off, and then playing certain types of music with certain types of beats and rhythms, and all of a sudden his walking becomes a little bit more normal and more effective. I've got a gentleman that was a former guitarist who lives with me, and when we play music therapy, even though he has very little control of his hands, he still manages to kind of come together and almost play like air guitar. It's really a cool thing to watch, a guy that's just misses more than anything being able to play the guitar, and then when the music comes on, he just sits there and kind of almost does a little air guitar thing. It's really quite powerful to watch. It's obviously really enjoyable for him to kind of go back down that memory of being a guitar player.
Yeah, Lo, actually, according to the research that I did leading into this interview, I was reading that when we sing, we actually activate more areas of our brains and reroute or create new neural networks that can get around damaged areas from, like, say, a stroke or something like that. That's pretty incredible. Now, you're talking about music being played, and what I just mentioned, it's the person actually singing. So there's many different facets of this, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we there's so much about the human brain that we don't know. That's the first thing we have to acknowledge, and it's one of the reasons why when people talk about cures for dementia and cures for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, a lot of these other disorders, is that there's just so much about the brain we don't know. So until we really understand more about the brain, it's very difficult for us to deal with some of these cognitive impairments. And so, yeah, all this research is somewhat new. One of the theories that I've read is that one of the last areas to be affected by memory loss is the part of the brain that deals with music. So there's a multifaceted component to this. There's a really, really good documentary on Netflix, if you haven't watched it. It's called Alive Inside.
Oh.
And the gentleman featured in that, it's been viewed a couple million times online, the video has. There's a gentleman who's nonverbal, doesn't speak. When you play songs, he'll sing.
Wow.
So there's obviously, the
Something's
part of the
still
brain
there.
that's dealing with verbal skills and singing isn't the same thing. So obviously there's some really fascinating cutting-edge stuff that's happening there.
Hey, we got about a minute left, and I know that you have like some personal stories about your residents. Can you share one?
Well, obviously I mentioned the gentleman that was the guitarist,
Mm-hmm.
but we've dealt with several residents before that would be sad, agitated, maybe afraid, and you just pop the headphones in and hit play on their playlist, and a certain song will come on that'll really speak to them, and all of a sudden the smile comes back and their speech becomes a little bit more clear, and their attitude changes. It's just really powerful to watch how effective personalized music can be to help somebody that's going through a tough time.
I have to ask, if they become more verbal or happy, how long does that last? Is it
Not
only
long.
while the music's being played?
Yeah, just a few minutes usually.
Wow,
Not,
just a glimmer.
Better than nothing, though.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely, and also too. I mean, you're basically, we have to get in their world. They're never going to come to ours if they're going through memory loss. And so, in order to get in their world, if they're thinking about a time they were driving a convertible in 1955, that's where we're going to go with them.
But just a great way to connect with loved ones that are suffering. Loe Hornbuckle, who runs several assisted living homes in the Dallas area that specialize in Alzheimer's and memory care. Thank you so much for sharing
It's incredible stuff.
the great strides in Alzheimer's with us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate it,
Thank
Lo. Have a
you.
good one.